Good morning. Here we are on Tuesday and doing another session for the SEPP Cooking Show and another step in the journey of the journey to the Symbiocene. So this is our spiritual environmental community of practice. That's what SEPP is about. So we have Glenn Albrecht's book here that Ling has just given to me, Earth Emotions, and so this talks about our global situation with climate change, ecological damage, all these kinds of things, which is the human impact on the planet that we all know about, and which is such a large impact that it's got its own geological name for an era, the Anthropocene. The Anthropocene being the human impact on the planet. And well, what are we going to do about that? And where are we going to go? And so Glenn Albrecht has proposed that we take a journey to the Symbiocene, which is where we live symbiotically with the planet, instead of just exploiting, and that means that we live with the planet in mutual benefit. Sounds like a good idea to me. And so one of the things about the spiritual environmental community practice is our emphasis on let's make the spiritual, and by spiritual I mean whatever spiritual you bring with you. Humanity's got quite a large diversity of the spiritual, but let's bring that spiritual dimension into addressing how we take this journey, addressing the obstacles, giving us inspiration, and helping us to understand what's going on in a spiritual way and applying our spiritual principles to the situation. And so today we've kind of reached a point where we can say we've got a landmark stage in the journey that we've talked about previously. We've talked about how we feel, the emotions that have come up around the environmental damage, around the suffering that we see with our brothers and sisters of humanity as they are impacted by the ecological changes, environmental changes, flood, fire, heat wave, these things associated with climate change, and a whole lot more, and how we feel about that, and then how we can see that insight in that turmoil of emotions. We can find that there is a small flame, might not be small, might be large, which is the calling in our heart to address that situation in some way, and find our way forward so that we can respond to it, and we can get on with practices that help us on this journey to a different way of living on the planet, so that we keep the planet livable for all, and we adopt this viable way of human living on the planet. And so to kind of encapsulate this landmark position, let me tell you a short story about the Buddha's life, and how what happened in one part of his life relates to the situation that we're in at the moment, at least to my mind. So the Buddha, as you may know, was brought up as a prince in a palace in a very protected and sheltered life. So he never saw anybody who was sick, he never saw anybody who was old, and he certainly never saw a dead body. And as a young man, he eventually got to go out of the palace and out of that environment, and he was for the first time exposed to seeing a sick person, and for the first time saw an old person bent over on a stick, and for the first time saw a dead body. And this produced a shock, as it's described in the sutras. He was shocked by this because it was such a contrast to what his life had already been. And he also felt some shame too, because it's like, well, how come I didn't know about this before? Because it's such a significant thing. How come I didn't know about this before and didn't get on with doing something about it? So there's that shock and that shame. And also there was a motivation that came out of that as well, which is the motivation to, well, you know, this is a dreadful situation. I want to be able to do something about it. And so there's a Sanskrit word that describes this complex emotion made up of these three things, which is called samvega. And so I believe that we're suffering a kind of similar emotion, or experiencing a similar emotion. Perhaps we call it environmental samvega, which has got these same characteristics in it. Here we are, we're seeing what's happening on the planet with the environment and the suffering of our brothers and sisters, and it can be a shock. I mean, we've talked to people a lot about this, and I've certainly experienced that kind of shock. When I read Climate Code Red, for instance, I really felt for weeks this shock. And also there's this element of shame as well, because it's like, well, why didn't I do something about it previously and what have you? But there's certainly this motivation, this calling of the heart to respond to the situation. And so this is, for me, this is my experience of environmental samvega. Perhaps you can relate to that. And so this is the landmark situation in the journey to the Symbiocene, to our transition. And it's like this samvega, this environmental samvega, is like having one wing that we can use to fly with. Well, what happens when you've only got one wing? You kind of go around in circles, and this might explain some of the angst that people are feeling, because they've got the samvega feeling, but then what's the other wing that can help people to go forward? And so this is another part of this story about the Buddha, about the Prince Siddhartha going out. He saw those three things, the sick person, the old person, and the dead body, but he also saw a monastic who was following this meditative, contemplative path. And he understood that to be the way forward. And so this is the other wing, and there's a Sanskrit name for that emotion as well, which is pasada. And so in that way, he felt that he had a reliable way forward that he could have confidence in. And so then, oh, two wings. Well, now we can fly straight and we can navigate. Navigate's a good concept too, because we have to navigate. The path forward is not completely known. We certainly know a lot of things about our path forward to the Symbiocene, but one of the things is to be innovative and understand and learn and expose new things that we need to do. And certainly one of those things for me and others is to start off as a foundational part of that pasada, of that reliable way forward, is to look at our spiritual that we have and see how that can give us something reliable as a foundation to go forward with. And so as we continue the journey and continue these little chats, then we'll talk more about that. And now you're probably feeling it's time to talk about food. And so here we go with Ling, and she's going to give us some news about, well, not just scrambled tofu, but our beautiful t-shirts for our spiritual environmental community practice. Part of that is the Nantian 2030 campaign. And when we thought we wanted a t-shirt, we thought, oh, we're going to have a picture on there, and so we asked, and one of our team members, their 11-year-old son, stuck his hand up and said, yes, I can do it. And so what you see here is from an 11-year-old thinking about the environmental situation, and he came up himself with this great little motif. And so there's links in the YouTube videos and in around the place, so you can actually go and buy one of these t-shirts and proudly wear it. Over to Lynn.
Auspicious greeting to us all. Thank you so much for being here today, joining us today, and happy Tuesday as well. And you know, as you can actually see, I also actually wearing this Nantian 2030 campaign t-shirt as well, proudly, and it comes in 2 colors, the gray and the white, and it's really comfortable because this is 100% certified organic and printed, and in Australia, in Sydney, right here. Now, because I'm wearing this beautiful t-shirt, I don't really wanted to get my curry, the yellow colors on it, so I'm going to put my aprons on.
Good idea.
I also would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands from the past, present, and emerging, and our ancestors. Because of our ancestors, that's why we're actually here today, because of our elders. We are actually here enjoying this beautiful country and this beautiful food and the land and everything. I would like to start with also acknowledging my master, Master Hsing Yun, who is actually have written many books, and this is one of the books that I'm going to share with you today on the December the 28th. Principles transcend mistakes. The rules of the law transcends principles. Powers and authority transcend the rules of the law. Causes and effect transcend power and authorities. There's 4 points, actually 5 points. He always actually very simple, that he always actually give us the 5 points. One is actually one who has faith is the most powerful. One who has the right will is the most powerful. One who has wisdom is the most powerful. One who has compassion is the most powerful. One who has gentle and mild. One who is gentle and mild is most powerful. So with that, we're going to contemplate on that while we're actually doing cooking. I have got a chopping board here. What I do need is a knife. Here, I just wanted to show you a little bit of the ingredients. There's some chili, there's some green, there's some colors actually to add that to it, the beetroot. I can either actually use garlic, you can either use garlic or ginger, but my choice today would be the gingers to add that with. I can also actually squeeze a little bit of lemons in there as well. I also have got my homegrown cherry tomatoes that already been washed, and also the parsley for the green, the coriander, of course, you know, with the Chinese cooking. I have the choices of using the eggs from the girls. This is actually the girls that we actually have met face to face in the farm. That's an egg that actually come from the girls. And to spice it with, I will use pepper, either you know, the turmeric or the curry powders. Now, and the soy sauce, of course. Doing tofu scramble without the tofu, that will be very funny, would it? Yeah. So you can actually get the tofu from whatever places, but be sure that if you can, buy the certified organic. So this tofu here was actually yesterday. I used that yesterday for the sang choy bao. So you don't have to, once you actually open the tofu, you don't have to use the whole lot. You can use them in sessions. So you know, with this tofu scramble, I can cut them in pieces, or I will just I won't be actually chop them up because it's a scramble, right? I won't be chopping them up. I just chopping them in pieces like that. And with my what do you call this one? This is the tomatoes. I'm going to use the tomatoes in there as well. Just cut them into two. And I'm going to use a little bit of chili. With the chili, if I'm actually bang them, if you have any questions, any comment, do actually ask us or drop them into the chat box, or you can write to us later on. Now, when you're actually doing cooking, it's if we can actually do it as a part of practice, as our daily practice. We do it mindfully, we do it heartfully, with our compassion. We're practicing that 5 points that our Master Hsing Yun or Master Hsing Yun has mentioned. You know, because we all wanted to actually to tap into that power, do we? Rather than is actually thinking that we want to control someone or control or concrete the world, why don't we just concrete our own self? Okay, now I have got the ingredients there. I'm also going to use a little bit of ginger. Chop them up mindfully and compassionately, because I believe this is all have life. The gingers, the strawberry, whatever it is, it comes from the soil. It's a blessing from Mother Earth. It does actually have life. Life is actually doesn't mean that it breathes. Like the bowl is also have life as well. You know, like this chopping board, like this knife also have life as well. To extend life doesn't mean that, you know, like you know, it have to be something that moving, something that have breath. It doesn't have to. If I've actually you know, like the t-shirt, like the aprons, like the shoes, they also actually have their life as well. Can we actually preserve life? That is very powerful when we actually you know, looking at life in different form. Okay, I have got my chili and my ginger chopping up. Now I'm going to drop them off into these beautiful pans that Li Ping gave it to me. Li Ping actually had this stainless steel pan, and it was actually wiggling with the handles, and she doesn't want them anymore. So she actually asked me if I can actually do something with it, and that is extending life. You know, she can actually choose to actually dump these pans in the recycling bin, but instead she's actually asked, you know, hey Ling, what can you do with this pan? Can you sort it out for me? Yeah, so I get the you know, the scissors, not the scissors, the hammers, and bang bang bang, and now this handle is actually quite steady. So I get to extend, and Li Ping also get to extend the life of these pans. All right, so I'm actually going to leave that sizzling for a little while. While that is actually being sizzling, I am going to add some colors to the tofu, because tofu is actually quite bland and you don't need much at all. You know, when we normally, seriously, we eat with our ears and we also eat with our eyes. If just the tofu by itself, it looks quite bland and quite boring. How is it that we can actually dress it up? How do we dress it up? You know, what is it we're going to dress it up with? The same thing as our mind, the same thing as our practice. You know, if we actually, you know, just staying by ourselves and just do our own practice, doing, you know, I don't know, it's your choice of practice. Chanting or reading the sutra or the Bible, or you know, contemplating on your breath by yourself, it's actually quite boring, you know, and our life is actually, yes, it's actually, you can say so short, but it's also quite long as well. You know, each day you can say that each day is actually quite short, but then if you actually bored, the day is extended so long. It's quite hard sometimes, you know, quite hard to get through the day. So what is it that we can do to help ourselves to dress up, to put some colors, to put some spice, to spice up our practice. Like Wendy was actually suggesting, which is very interesting, because I was thinking about that before as well, and she was saying that, you know, she was thinking to run workshops with me, which is fantastic. You know, if you can actually run it with someone else, why not? You know, because we can learn from each other's rather than you just do it by yourself. It's quite boring, I would say. But again, having said that, it's very personal. It's a personal thing, because some people, they just wanted to do it by themselves and do it very well by themselves. It's all relatively very personal. Now, very quickly, that's already done. I can smell it's very, very nice. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to pop the tofu in there. I just use this one to scramble it up. While I'm actually cooking, I also practicing, I also harvesting, I also, harvesting or transcending my compassion as well. For example, if I'm actually treat this, or having my anger, if I'm angry with the what happened in the past with the bees or the butterflies or my neighbors or whatever it is, then my feelings will transcend into this dish, into the tofu, the energy. So what is it that I can do is to practice compassion while I'm actually dealing with this this dish, the tofu. I can do the chanting. I can do the imagination, like the chant, like may all beings be happy, may I be happy. Just chanting, repeating that. May all beings be healthy. All being also mean Mother Earth as well. It's not just the being. Mother Earth is also a being as well. A tree, the rivers. A rock, a mountain, it's also a being as well. So you just scramble them in there, practicing. I can smell it beautifully. I can smell the chili. I can smell the tofu. Like I said earlier, we eat with our 5 senses. Our ears listening, our eyes watching, our mind is actually thinking, our heart is in it or not. Now it's actually quite bright at the moment, so what I'm actually going to add in there is the colors. I'm going to add the red colors into it. As you can see, why this is the practice, I can see changes right before my eyes. Just that little beetroot, it changed the colors of the tofu. The tofu no longer look bored. The tofu actually brights up with red colors now. Now it looks a little bit more interesting, right? What else is actually that we're practicing? Our tongue. Our tongue is actually saying good words. Not just our mind, not just our eyes seeing good things, like the monkey, the 3 monkey, I'm sure you have seen, say no evil, see no evil, listen to no evils. So we can actually practice that. That will be really good. Now that is actually the eyes looking. The next step is actually our tongue, our mouth. What is it that we can actually make it taste good? Because not only is healthy for our mind, for our eyes, it also has to be tasty as well. If this is not tasty, you think I'm going to eat it? Very unlikely. So I'm going to add sprinkle the peppers into it. I make my own, I grind up my own pepper, also the soy sauce, add the soy sauce into it. I'm also going to add a little bit of sesame seeds. When we chew on the sesame seed, see, we can actually also practice being mindful. We can taste the sesame seeds or not. Now this goji berry is very, very good for eyes. So at the same time where I'm actually eating, can I actually also care for this body as well? This is the curry powder. So the curry powders also add the taste to it as well. Now, am I going to stop there or am I going to use the pine nut? I'm not going to use the pine nut today because there are already enough ingredients in there. Smells really, really delicious. I wish you can actually be here and you know, see for yourself. Now in there already I have achieved at least 5 colors. You can actually see that it's actually no longer bright red. It's being colored, being transcended, being a bit different now. You can actually see that with the yellow added to it, it's no longer reddish. And with the tofu, where is the tofu? The tofu doesn't no longer look like a tofu. So this is also another practice, another spiritual and environmental preservation practice, where it's not just one. One is many, many is one. Now I can see that it's actually done because of the smell. At this stage, I'm throwing into my tomatoes from home, and also my coriander. I already turned off the heat. That way, I also practicing preserving the energy as well. If I don't need the heat anymore, why still having the heat? The heat is actually still there even I'm turning it off because it's this is an electric stove. The heat still go on for another minute or so. So there I have got it. I can smell beautiful, beautiful coriander. And what happened to the tofu? What happened to the curry? What happened to the beetroot? It's no longer being an individual, yet it's still individual. You can actually see now that we have got this beautiful dish that already done. Smells fantastic. I can actually serve it in a small plate, or I can serve it on a big plate. Now another choice I also have is, well, if this is actually a breakfast, I can actually serve it on toast or bread. The gluten-free bread. Thomas, would you like to do it on a bread or by itself?
Yeah, on bread's good, thanks.
On bread? Okay. So
this is such a great restaurant.
I call this one is actually 107 you know, cafe, because Tom actually working from home, and you know, I would ask him, you know, what does he want to order from 107 cafe. So we can actually just put a piece of bread or toast on it, and then we can just, oop, I dropped some. That's very naughty. That will go to the worms then. You know, in Chinese culture, we believe that everything that actually dropped to the soil, off to the ground, that's an offering to Mother Earth. That is the offering to the Juya, you know, the land god. Okay, so that is actually done. Now I'm going to have my one just as it is. And also the choice of plate that we use is quite interesting as well. I just wanted to show you another thing. This is a stainless steel pan. Do not use the non-stick plate, because non-stick is very, very bad for the environment. Not just the outer environment, it's also for our health as well. Our health, our body is also environment. So if we want to look after, we look after the environment, make sure that we look after our body as well. Make that choice, choose the stainless steel. Here we got it. One is actually the for Ling, and the other one is for Tom. We can also serve it in there as well.